Hey everyone, Kyle Waddell of Christ Mission Church, Las Vegas. Today we're going to do a video that was requested by John BMX for Christ. He wanted to know who wrote the Gospels and most of the New Testament. Skeptics say we don't know who wrote the Gospels, but the historical and textual evidence tells a different story. So today we're going to break down why we can trust the traditional authorship of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and also the other Pauline epistles, and writers of Revelation and Acts. So let's start with the earliest Christians, okay? Church leaders in the 2nd century, like Irenaeus, right around 180 AD, were crystal clear on who wrote the Gospels. So Matthew was written by the tax collector, one of Jesus' 12 apostles. That was from a document called Irenaeus Against Heresies. Mark, the interpreter of Peter, writing everything Peter taught. That was found in Papias, 120 AD. Luke, the companion of Paul, who carefully investigated everything, Meroration fragment. And then John, the disciple whom Jesus loved, who lived into old age. Irenaeus, who was a student of Polycarp, who knew John. As a historian, when you can be able to break down the connections like that from the primary sources, primary sources are key. They are king. You get a lot more credibility. The gospel according to Matthew, according to Mark's, and so on. There were no anonymous gospel manuscripts that exist, none at all. The titles show up in every region where the manuscripts were spread, from Egypt to Rome to Syria. You would think that if there was contention about who wrote them, you'd find, let's say, the book of Matthew, you'd find one that said, oh, this is the book of Peter, or the book of Jack Q so-and-so over here. But no, they all match up with who the accepted writer is. Now, what about inside the Gospels? Even though they're written in third person, they carry the fingerprints of the traditional authors. Matthew focuses heavily on Jewish law and prophecy. It fits a Jewish tax collector. Detailed references to money. Interesting for someone whose job was taxes. Mark, he was brief, fast-paced, and action-driven. Peter's style. He included embarrassing moments for Peter, supports Peter's influence, but he didn't have the ego. But he kept it all together. Luke, he was polished Greek, long medical terms, historical detail that fits the detail of a physician. Physician is all about that finer details, right to the point. Being a companion of Paul, which is confirmed in Acts and Paul's letters, so he was referenced. Now, we get into John. He was about deep theology, focused on Jesus' divinity, intimate knowledge of events. Fits the disciple Jesus loved. Kind of refers to himself as the third person, the disciple that Jesus loved. Hey, I'm the one that Jesus loved. Familiar with Jewish customs and geography, fits the Palestinian Jew from that time. That gives more credibility to the writing. Now, let's also think here. If these names were made up later, they picked terrible ones for making things up. Why would you go for a tax collector like Matthew? People hated tax collectors. We even hate them today. Sorry if you're a tax collector watches, but we really don't like tax collections. IRS here in the U.S. not really liked that well. Mark wasn't even an apostle. No one really knew him. Luke was also not an apostle, barely mentioned. Now John, yeah, he's big, but if you're inventing authors, why not pick Peter or James for all of them? The fact that these less famous names stuck supports the idea that they reflect real tradition, not marketing. Now, when we look here at history, another argument we'll get is why about all these other gospels that were rejected? The early church didn't accept anything. They rejected dozens of Gnostic or fake gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas and Judas. They had clear signs of later authorship. They sometimes came out 100 years later and had too much of a deviation from the connection of the people they claimed to be speaking for. The four we have were uniquely connected to the eyewitnesses and the close companions, which builds the case that Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John were written by who they say they were written by. Now, we never know of 100% certainty who wrote the Gospels because we're dealing with ancient history. But the historical, textual, logical evidence gives us every reason to believe that the traditional authorship is reliable and that it is to be trusted. Now, as we get back to the idea of the names of the other books, again, like I said, they stated their names. Paul said that he wrote these books that say Paul. John for Revelations, Peter for Peter, 1st, 2nd Peter, and James, and John. So tradition basically has a strong credibility that we can look to. So videos in researching and also looked up different sources, but some great videos I would definitely like to recommend if you want to get deeper into this and being able to answer the skeptics' questions and their arguments. A great video is Testify. They have a whole series with a lot of in-depth arguments for the authorship being Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And Cross-Examine has another great video out there. I'll try to leave their links in the description. Check them out. Feel free to give any questions you have, comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, share the video. But you know what? Keep looking up. Jesus is coming soon.